Hi, welcome everybody. We're here today at the Sylvan Ranch Community Garden to plant some plants with our garden core.
We're so excited that today is our planting day. We recruited a group of volunteers from our community who are all Citrus Heights Water District customers, and those people are going to be our volunteer garden core members. And so today these members are going to be planting everything in the garden in the Water District's plots, and we're hoping that they can help you all learn more today about how to be more water efficient with your landscape at home.
Just starting with the basics, these are valves and filtration systems that are already installed and we're going to be connecting into. So the major components that are in the beginning of the system, these are two different styles of the exact same thing. So this just turns the system on and off. The big thing to remember with drip is it's a generic term. There's multiple styles of drip. All of them have functions and then uses that are going to be applicable for whatever we're doing. We're doing two different types today. We're going to be doing a point source, which is an emitter that's connected to a tube. And then we're also going to be doing an inline system, which is laid out in a grid pattern, which is really exciting. What that product really allows us to do is get a number of how much water is coming out of it, and then that number then we can put into a controller. A couple of tools we're going to be using, punch tools today, some real fancy stuff, cutters, punch tool, and an inserter. So there's some cool stuff, but we can also just do it with really basic tools as well. The tubing, I wanted to give you guys an example of this. What's really cool about this tubing right here is you can see there's an emitter that's built in to each spot. You see a hole there. In this case, it's 12 inches apart. So that emitter is embedded inside the tubing and then allows the water to come out. Key component to remember with all of these emitters that we're using is they're pressure compensating emitters. What that means is that whether it's coming out at this point of the tube or at this point of the tube, the water is the same flow rate as it goes because it compensates the pressure as it moves through the tubing, which is a very nice feature to have. So we're going to start out and do a point system. So a point source system, we're going to actually connect to our POC, which is our point of connection. Just a little trick whenever you're cutting PVC is that we want flush cuts. The reason is the way the plumbing works is that glue is actually not glue. It actually creates a chemical reaction. It's a solvent. So we want flush cuts so that we can join the two materials together. The key is that we're looking at this point here to cut. We're going to use primer today and clean the pipe off. We'll keep it in the dirt area. This stuff stains everything, so we don't want to have that touching concrete especially. Anything that you don't want to be purple. And you'll see how that works. It should start peeling that stuff away for you. So the next is we're going to put a 90 on this. So anytime we do any gluing, it's the outside of the pipe and then just a dauber in there. The key component again is it's not glue. So everything that's white needs to be covered, same with everything that's purple there. So outside first, look at that. Then one time in there, make sure it goes. Now we're gonna get to the tubing here. These are compression fittings. This is an adapter. So this goes from the tubing, we're gonna adapt it into PVC and make that connection to go ahead and swing this material out. A little trick with this is you can see it's a compression fitting, so I like to just soften that tip up a little bit, hold it with both hands so that you can actually rotate that in there. It's not always that hard. If you have a sunny day, it's nice to lay this stuff out and actually have it in the sun. It'll soften it up and make it a lot easier to work with. And the trick with unrolling tubing is to unroll it. Don't try to get that mess of a coil. It makes life miserable for you. Like we did there, we're gonna go ahead and loop this around and then we're just gonna rough in the material here. One time around this material here and then we're just gonna insert that in. Again, because it's a different material. We'll give that a second to set up here. We had fancy tools to cut tubing. One of my favorite tools for pruning is pruners, but it also works great on tubing. Guess what? I always have them on me, so I can use it for multiple functions. It's really, really good to have. So we're all done with this bed right here as far as getting it prepped. We're gonna get the plants placed in here, get those installed, and then we'll come back in and do the emitters to each individual plant once we know where they're at. But we'll leave the tube loose so that we can move around in the bed since it's so tight.
We want to loosen this plant up. It's great. We don't have roots coming out of the bottom. There's some leaves here on the soil surface, but if you have any weeds in this pot, they need to be removed. Otherwise, you're always going to have those weeds in your garden. So we want to dig a hole for our plant, and we want to get it out and hold on to it so that it doesn't all break apart. And we want to loosen up, this is very wet, but we want to loosen up the roots really nicely so that they start coming out and they'll be able to go and reach out into the soil. So that's what we want to do. Now you can see here, that's high. I haven't gotten out enough soil. A nice easy thing that you can do so you're not putting the plant in and out and in and out is you can just use the pot or use a measuring tape and just measure how deep down you need to go so you don't have to keep digging and digging. Another thing, which is a little harder here in a garden setting, is at home, you want to dig your hole and have it nice and big, but the soil on the bottom of the hole needs to be native or undisturbed soil. Because if it isn't, what's going to happen is that plant, as the soil settles, it just keeps going down and down and down. And then the water goes into the plant instead of going out into the soil more. And when we finish, we want the top to be just about an inch above the soil surface. That would be the same at home. You really want to be sure that your plants are watered in well and you don't stomp on plants like we used to. We used to go, oh yeah, no, you have to do that. But you do want to press it in to get air pockets out. You want the soil to be in contact with the roots. So then I'm going to be pushing it in like this, but you want to be sure to water it in well. Here we go. And then just keep going with the soil and keep pressing it in really well. Another thing that I'll just say about the size, use a measuring tape if you need to. I'm a terrible judge of size. So, you know, if a plant is going to be 4 feet wide at maturity, 2 feet this way and 2 feet this way, that's a lot of space, right? Okay, so I think we're ready to get started on installing the irrigation and the plants.
We're just going to show an example of installing the emitters. So we're going to use a punch tool to install into the black tubing. My plant is here. We want to get the water on each side of the plant. So we're going to put 2 emitters going to each side of the plant. Kind of give it a lift up there. Okay. Punch that in. Okay. Then we'll take one of the emitters. Punch that guy in like that. And then we'll just give it a pull to make sure.
Yes.
Next step that we're going to be doing on that is we're going to get some tubing. And I like to leave a little bit extra so we have some flexibility. So we'll take that, put that on there, run that around to the side, take our handy dandy pruners here, leave a little extra length. Same thing we were talking about before, don't fight the material. So we'll bring that over to the side here, bring it into this place, pin goes on top of that. Same thing on this side, bring it in over here. What we don't want is to cause tension on that.
Okay.
Go ahead. Another trick that I always try to show people is that we have 2 emitters going to one plant, we'll then pin the main tubing there. So that locks that in place, it doesn't pull those out.
So the last thing that we will do in these beds, once the emitter lines have gone in, the plants have gone in, we want to top it off with a nice layer of mulch. This is an organic, what we refer to as arborist mulch, because the entire tree has been mulched up. You get different sizes like this. And what's great about that is that it breaks down at different rates and it helps to improve the soil. Some nutrients will go back into the soil, but also on the soil surface itself, mulch will really help to keep the weeds suppressed, will be able to retain soil moisture and moderate the soil's temperature as well. It's very important to keep the mulch a little bit away from the base of the plant so that it's really wet. If it stays wet and then it stays up next to the plant, it'll start to rot and cause disease, give space for pests to find their little homes, and we don't want any of that. So just a couple of inches on the top of this edible bed will be great. In your landscape, you probably want 3 to 4 inches. As I said, it's a great dressing on the top to finish it off, and many benefits from the mulch.
When you're wiring a system, you always have to have 2 wires no matter what the situation is. One's a common wire, one's a power wire. And how the system works is it literally just sends a loop. This component here, the wires come in, it's a magnet, lifts it up and down, it releases the pressure and water flows through. That's all it is, super simple. To wire though, all the wires go from each one to that common or that power wire to make that loop, and then this one goes back to that spot on the controller. The way this works, 2 hands on top of it, this is really amazing soil. This will not happen at your house. But we can actually pull a core up depending on what the soil conditions are. Fortunately, we've got a little bit. And then that'll actually give me a profile. What will happen over time as this material gets more compacted, it'll actually give me a profile. How deep is the water getting? Do I have water there? Is it so hard I can't get anything in there? Little pro tip with using one of these, if the soil is compacted and a little dry, using a large screwdriver, inserting that into the ground, breaking it up a little bit, and then being able to get it down just so you can get down into a depth that where the plant roots are. That's what we're going for.
Thank you, everybody. We hope you learned something today, and we hope to see you soon here at the garden.
And to learn more on these techniques that we've covered today, please go to our website at chwd.org, and you can learn more about not only the Sylvan Ranch Community Garden, but other programs that we offer to our customers.